So as I said, this is hosted by the Centre for Gender Studies at Lancaster University. I'm going to pop our website in the chat, and you can see some more information about us there and other past events that have been recorded, and they're on. You can watch them on YouTube if you're interested as well. So today we're really pleased to be joined by Rachel. So sorry, I'm trying to look at so many windows. I've just lost my thing. So Rachel Odufuwa is an associate lecturer in gender studies and a PhD student at Lancaster University. Her research focuses on amplifying the voices of Black women to enable them to become agents of knowledge rather than objects of knowledge, which has historically been the positioning of Black women. Specifically, her PhD research is seeking to amplify Black women's voices concerning higher education, decolonising agendas, and to enable them to speak their truths about current decolonising agendas. So I'll hand over to Rachel. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to hear me talk. I'm deeply honoured and humbled that you've all taken the time to come and listen to me. I'd also like to say thank you to Laura and Shakti for organising this event. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity. So I just want to double check that everyone can see the screen that I'm sharing. Okay, cool. So before going into today's talk, I believe that it's important to stress that the topic discussed today will delve into some experiences from myself and also from participants, which are quite traumatic. And so they may cause feelings of psychological distress and trauma from those listening. So therefore, I wanted to start by kind of directing you all to some support networks that might help, should you become, distressed. So I've just changed the slide. So yeah, these are a list of some support networks available. Anxiety UK, Mind Infoline, NHS Mental Health Services, Rethink Mental Illness, and Samaritans. So hopefully, I'm not intending to cause anyone any psychological distress or trauma, but if you should be affected by these, please do reach out. Okay, so thank you. Once again for coming to hear me speak, and I hope this talk will be interesting, enlightening, and useful. So I'm just going to begin. Okay, so my talk is going to focus on the topic of beauty, particularly white standards of beauty. And I'm going to be kind of reading from something that I've written and hopefully making eye contact. I just want to check, because I know there's some background noise. I just hope you all can hear me well before I continue.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, that's
Anybody
fine.
who can't?
Thank you. Just like because it was quite loud outside, so I think it's quieted down. So okay, I will proceed. What are some of the popular understandings we have of beauty in our society? Beauty comes from within. Beauty is only skin deep. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Maybe some of the things that come to mind when thinking about this question. Such sayings are firmly embedded within our everyday culture and our society's way of telling us the beauty is far removed from the outer appearance of a person and more about a person's inner beauty. Whilst these sayings run deep within our society, they must be seen in tandem with the social reality of beauty. In other words, beauty continues to be marked by gendered racism or racialized sexism, whereby racism and sexism converge together to denigrate Black women's aesthetics. More specifically, Black women's darker skin tones, as well as our Afro-textured hair, are excluded from the dominant standard of beauty, which essentially privileges whiteness and features associated with white women, such as white or fair skin and long straight hair. Okay, so as Patricia Hill Collins states, race, gender, and sexuality converge on this issue of evaluating beauty. Judging white women by their physical appearance and attractiveness to men objectifies them, but their white skin and straight hair privileges them in a system in which part of the basic definition of whiteness is superiority to blackness. The denigration of Black women's aesthetics can have negative consequences on Black women by causing us to internalize ourselves as ugly. As a Black woman, internalizing myself as ugly has definitely been a central part of my experiences. My auto-ethnography in my MA thesis, which was one of the methods that I employed here, elaborates on this experience by analysing my individual experiences to provide an understanding of societal experience. However, before going into these experiences, I wish to make some points that articulate the struggles that Black or women of colour have to come to terms with when engaging in auto-ethnography. So I am heavily inspired by Heidi Safia Mirza, who taps into these struggles in her work. I couldn't agree with Mirza more when she says that visible difference written on the body means Black women are drawn into sharing our own very private information to make a point. Black women can't afford the luxury enjoyed by white male theorists who need not admit their unmarked bodies into theory. They have the privilege to opt for silence about their own private information. Black women, on the other hand, and those marginal others who are marked by their disability and sexuality, live in and with the body. They are compelled to share a certain degree of private information just so they can be seen and heard, and so gain a modicum of legitimacy in the white, heteronormative, patriarchal world. But in so doing, the newly visible woman of colour becomes exposed, vulnerable, and open to individual scrutiny and judgment. As I seek to bravely articulate my experiences, I am aware that these experiences are intrusive, embarrassing, and therapeutic all at once. However, what encourages me to take this risk of sharing my personal story with you all is Mirza's personal mantra that Black women must tell our stories or others will tell them for us. Our stories must be told. Without further ado, I will now turn to sharing my experiences with you all. So I do not recall many occasions in my life in which I have viewed my dark skin and natural hair as something beautiful and desirable. My skin tone and hair has mostly been viewed by me as ugly. Coming to terms with where this perception originated from, I'm sad to say that I learned to view myself in this way from family members. I remember a certain family member telling my sister and me, who are both dark-skinned, at a young age, that the lighter the skin, the prettier a woman is. From there on, I internalized fair or light skin as synonymous with beauty and dark skin as synonymous with ugliness. I do not have any bitter feelings towards my family. In some ways, I do not blame them for holding such views because they were born and bred in Nigeria, where colorism is a widespread issue. So colorism is a pernicious, internalized form of racism, which involves prejudice, stereotyping, and perceptions of beauty among members of the same racial group, whereby light skin is more highly valued than dark skin. It is important to stress, however, that colorism is a profoundly gendered issue. which impacts women more than men. More specifically, the gendered nature of colorism stems from the affinitive relationship between aesthetic features and ideas about physical attractiveness, and from a double standards that applies expectations of attractiveness more rigidly to women. In a society in which white or fair skin is a well-valued dimension of the dominant standard of beauty, women with darker skin are at a disadvantage in particular. So reflecting on my personal experience, I can now see that the gendered dimension of colorism was definitely relevant to my own personal experience. More specifically, I do not recall my family ever telling my two brothers, who are also dark-skinned, the lighter the skin, the more handsome a man is. It does upset me to know that my family endorsed colorist gendered beliefs that prevented me from developing a positive racial identity about my physical characteristics from a young age. So drawing on wider literature, namely White's work, my experience here reveals how white standards of beauty were constructed against me as the norm, ideal, and desirable from a young age. As my auto-ethnography goes on to illuminate, this construction led me to engage in certain stylization practices, such as attempting to bleach my skin and wanting to chemically straighten my hair, which is otherwise known as relaxing, as part of efforts to conform to white standards of beauty, for which I paid a heavy price. However, as my auto-ethnography reveals, certainly the last part of it, which is called Learning to Love and Accept Myself, I finally came to the other end of rejecting and resisting white standards of beauty. So in this part of my auto-ethnography that I will share with you now, it focuses on my hair transformation from chemically straightened hair to my natural Afro-textured hair. Okay, so just reading from my auto-ethnography again. I remember coming across other Black women's hair transformation from relaxed to natural hair and being so inspired by their transformation. More specifically, as I was writing my MA thesis, I came across Carolette Norwood's hair story entitled Decolonizing My Hair, Unshackling My Curls, an auto-ethnography on what makes my natural hair journey a Black feminist statement, whereby Norwood adopts a specifically Black feminist stance by arguing that her decision to go natural was primarily about self-definition and resisting oppressive gendered racist messages which assert the Black feminine aesthetic to be ugly. I recall reading Norwood's auto-ethnography and feeling so relieved to have found her work. Norwood's piece has genuinely transformed my consciousness and has empowered me to also resist white standards of beauty. After reading Norwood's work, I recall asking myself the following questions. Why am I altering my appearance when I'm paying such a heavy price for it? And why should I hate the way God made me? This empowerment has given me the strength to hold up a new mirror to myself and to see and love myself for who I really am. As a result, I've engaged in several acts, particularly in relation to my hair, which are intended to resist white standards of beauty and to enable me to define my aesthetic in my own way. So one of the decisions I made was to go natural and to no longer chemically straighten my hair. And so, like, if you've known me for a while, you may have noticed that I tend to have my hair in braids like this, which is kind of a conscious decision by me to wear my hair in more authentic Black hairstyles, that allow me to embrace my Black beauty. So this decision to kind of wear my hair naturally, as well as like engaging in more authentic Black hairstyles, is kind of me making a powerful statement where I'm saying that I will no longer allow someone else's definition of beauty to be imposed upon me. So taking together my auto-ethnography, whereby I have essentially embarked on this journey from negativity to positivity can be summarized under the following two themes of construction of white standards of beauty and finding my own center. So though my auto-ethnography was a therapeutic experience in that it allowed me to document certain experiences that I had been suppressing for a long time, what was remarkable to me was how my experiences of white standards of beauty were shared with other Black women. They were not just my experiences. So in conjunction with my auto-ethnography, I also used unstructured interviews with other Black women in my thesis, my master's thesis, where I discovered that other Black women that I interviewed also experienced the construction of white standards of beauty against them, and as well as a move to finding their center. So as such, my ethnographic experiences cannot be divorced from the wider experience, which in this case is the Black female experience. Rather, my experiences are shared with other Black women, and it's at this point that I wish to introduce Black feminography.
Rachel, do you want to just make the, if you click on the button at the bottom to make the screen full screen, you know, just so we can't read those little boxes, just that was all.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to now just talk about this method of Black feminography. Okay, so the personal is political, which was kind of like the start of the way I kind of like to label this talk or this method, is to kind of talk about this statement, this feminist inspired statement, which you know, came into fruition during the second wave feminist movement in the 1970s, and is a core theme that underpins Black feminography. So in other words, my personal experiences, which I have shared with you all, are linked to social structures. So in this case, gendered racism or anti-Black women oppression, and as such, they may be shared by other Black women. So putting it more succinctly, Black feminography argues that structural conditions such as gendered racism are always shared, which need to be known and discussed. The alternative of not acknowledging experiences as such, means that they may be approached from a neoliberal feminist stance, which argues that it is up to the individual and how they want to interpret their experiences, which ignores the material reality of the world we live in, whereby because we inhabit Black women's bodies, we inhabit different experiential worlds to those inhabiting, let's say, white men's bodies. Thus, Black feminography critiques the idea that as an individual woman, this is my individual story, or that my auto-ethnography can be viewed in isolation from social structures, because this detaches me from the Black female experience, which is wider than my experiences. As such, Black feminography calls for Black women using auto-ethnography to combine the auto-ethnographic reflections with the reflections of other Black women in, for example, qualitative interviews. Okay, so rooted in Black feminism, Black feminography as a form of research has got a lot to offer. And from what I've learned, it has got a particular aspect to it, which suits research around the Black female experience. And so just talking about what inspired me to use Black feminography, I think it was because I was really keen or wanted to use an approach that would enable ordinary Black women to be involved in the process of producing Black feminist knowledge or theory. So in other words, I wanted to challenge the idea that a certain group of people, in other words, Black feminist academics, are the only legitimate producers of Black feminist knowledge. Rather, I wanted to bring together my experiences of white standards of beauty with other Black women's experiences of white standards of beauty to make the production of Black feminist theory a more democratic and egalitarian process. In this sense, I was seeking to establish a dialogue between my personal experiences and the experiences of other Black women. Establishing such a dialogue is consistent with Black feminist ways of knowing, which argues that mutual dialogue is necessary when it comes to assessing knowledge claims. Therefore, by using Black feminography, I was able to engage in dialogue with other Black women to assess the validity of my auto-ethnographic experiences and to check whether my experiences of the construction of white standards of beauty and finding my center are identified in other Black women's experiences. Okay, so in using Black feminography, I'm aware that there is this potential risk of generalizing shared experiences to all Black women and, seeing shared experiences as evidence of a standard mode of experiencing oppression from a Black female standpoint. So this critique that I am articulating here comes from feminist subjectivity theory, which is kind of like, I guess, against generalizing experiences and, seeks to present one story as a subjective reality that in essence represents a theoretical interpretation of one's reality as a Black woman who lives it. However, the problem with individualizing people's experiences, as feminist subjectivity theory does, is that it overlooks the structural conditions, so such as patriarchy, racism, and capitalism, that we are all nevertheless constrained by. So aware of the drawbacks of both Black feminography and feminist subjectivity theory, I sought to use an approach that I guess is supposed to be a compromise between these two approaches. So to be more specific, my approach in using Black feminography was to avoid generalizing my experiences to all Black women of my era, but to still maintain the perspective that, Black women, we have a shared knowledge because we are bound by the intersectionality of our race and gender, which lends us to experiences of gendered racism. Thus, while Black women may not have exactly the same experiences of gendered racism because of the intersectionality of this with other factors such as class, I would argue that gendered racism is still an integral part of Black women's experiences. As such, it is the structural conditions, in this case, gendered racism, which are always shared. So when I conducted my analysis, I sought to identify where the shared experiences were to build theory from and analyze, as well as identify where the different experiences were to analyze, which would enable me to perform both Black feminography and feminist subjectivity theory. So yeah, in the next section of this presentation, I'm going to be discussing how the theme of the construction of white standards of beauty as the ideal, the norm, and what is seen as desirable, and also this other theme of finding my or our center and resisting white standards of beauty was a shared experience between the Black women I interviewed for my research and myself, which aligns closely with the Black feminography strand of this research. Okay, so just addressing this construction of the white standard of beauty, when analyzing my auto-ethnography and interviews, I found that the construction of white standards of beauty was something that was shared between the Black women in my study and me. So as I mentioned earlier, certain family members constructed fair skin as the ideal by telling my sister and me that, the lighter the skin, the prettier a woman is. And similar to this experience, I identified this construction of white standard of beauty as the ideal within the experiences of the Black women I interviewed. So just to kind of point out the names that I do mention, of course, they have been changed to protect the identity of the participants in the study. So I'm just now going to share just some of the experiences that the other Black women in my study had with regards to white standards of beauty. Okay, so for one of my participants, Zainab, fair skin was constructed as the ideal in her experiences. So as she says, yeah, I had a teacher in Nigeria say to me when I was younger, I think I was in primary school, I was about 9 or 10, that if I was lighter, I would be more beautiful. Another participant, Barbara, articulates the construction of white standards of beauty, but with regards to hair. Okay, so even with Black people, as she says, Black women at uni, I've had the same reaction. Oh, your natural hair is a mess. You're not going to get a weave. So weave is like, where we kind of plait our hair, cornrow our hair, and then sew in synthetic or human hair. Okay, so just continuing from what she says, you're not going to get a weave, you're not going to do something to your hair to make it look nice. And then similar to Barbara, Sarah, another participant, also encountered the construction of white standards of beauty with regards to hair. So I would wear weaves at uni, so I would feel more attractive to whoever's going to be attracted to me, whether that's a white person or a Black person. So taking together these experiences shared by the Black women in my study and myself reveal the symbolic violence embedded in our experiences. So symbolic violence, which is coined by Bourdieu, refers to the disguised dominance that is reproduced in everyday social habits, or as Bourdieu terms this, habitus. Put another way, symbolic violence is a subtle form of violence that stems from embodying oppressive beliefs, whether that be consciously or or unconsciously. Therefore, the accounts provided in the stories shared above illustrate how Black people continue to internalize oppressive beliefs which say that Black is ugly and white is beautiful. We are still living with the aftermath of slavery and colonialism, which introduced social hierarchies according to skin tone and hair. More specifically, during slavery, there was a rigid caste system which distinguished between Black slaves based on skin tone and hair texture. In this case, fairer-skinned slaves with looser curls received far better treatment than darker-skinned Black women with tightly coiled hair. This hierarchy of skin tones and hair types was based on European or white standards of beauty, which in turn led to development of these social structures of colorism and texturism that is still part and parcel of our society today. As such, the wounds of slavery and colonialism are still very much felt in the psyche of Black people, whereby oppressive ideas or social structures continue to be internalized by us, whether we are conscious of this or not. So the second theme, or the next theme that I mentioned before, is finding my center, resisting white standards of beauty. Okay, so just to kind of address this term of finding my center and what it means. So finding my center is a concept situated within Black feminist theory, which essentially asks Black women to engage in this practice of self-definition. More specifically, finding my center is about Black women reclaiming agency to define their beauty in their own way, and to therefore generate an alternative definition of beauty that challenges the mainstream definition. As such, finding my center is an emancipatory and liberatory process. So as shared from my auto-ethnography, I decided to no longer chemically straighten my hair, but to rather leave it in its natural state, which was a way for me to find my center and to resist white standards of beauty. Similarly, I identified that the Black women in my study also engaged in finding my center and resisting white standards of beauty. So two participants, Zainab and Benita, for example, demonstrate their resistance to white standards of beauty in particular, this idea that, their dark skin is ugly. So just reading, firstly, Zainab's account, she says, I went through a lot of stages where at the point where I bleached my skin, like I hated my skin color because I was very dark and people also told me. But then I started loving my skin tone, seeing other dark-skinned women like me who love their skin color and they look beautiful to me. And I think I'm beautiful just the way I am. And reading from Benita, she says, when I was younger, there was a part of me that would want to be lighter, but now I've just accepted it. I don't really see an issue in it. It's just like, why should I have to change? Like, you don't want to live your life in a lie. Like, I don't want to be with someone or have friends that want me to be like them. So I'd rather be like, I like my dark skin rather than just want to be them. Like, what point is that? What's the point in that? That's not really friendship to me if you have to change yourself to fit in with someone. In addition to Zainab and Benita, another participant, Sue, also demonstrates her resistance to white standards of beauty, but with regards to her hair. More specifically, she demonstrates her resistance to the idea that she needs to have relaxed hair. So Sue says, by the time I started university, it's like, I don't need to do this, so why am I doing this? I'm not in a school where they're telling me to do X, Y, Z hairstyles. I can just have any hair as of whenever I want to, and as of whenever I want. So why should relaxer be part of that process? For me, it didn't make any sense because that's not how I wanted to define myself when I came to university. So even though I had more weaves and maybe less braids, the relaxer for me was a sacrifice that I was not willing to make. I didn't think it was necessary. I think in the growing Black girl community, it's becoming more of a accept your hair as it is, even if it's not the tidiest or the longest. Just work with what you've got. Again, I've had protective styles like weaves, wigs, but relaxing is just too damaging. So our experiences revealed here are essentially illustrating how we have learnt to hold up a new mirror to ourselves, which has enabled us to define ourselves on our own terms, in contrast to the gendered racist messages encapsulated within white standards of beauty. More specifically, we have come to love and accept our darker skin tone and our Afro-textured hair as they are. We no longer feel the need to take on what Jones and Shorter Gooden term the Lily complex, whereby we, in inverted commas, alter, disguise, or cover up our physical self in order to assimilate and be accepted as attractive. In other words, we are resisting white standards of beauty by putting forward our own conceptions of beauty and essentially saying that these are our definitions of beauty and we are fine with it. Okay, so I'm just aware of time. So, okay, so I just want to kind of just talk about, the different experiences that also became apparent when doing this research. So it aligns with the feminist subjectivity theory that I talked about earlier. And so just this idea that we should not generalize shared experiences to everyone belonging to a particular group. So in this case, the category of Black women. So when doing my research, there were 2 women in my study which had very different experiences from the rest of the Black women in the study, including myself. And yeah, because of time, I'll just focus on just one of the participants and just give a brief discussion of her experience concerning white standards of beauty. So one of the participants, Tibifa, encounters a unique experience concerning white standards of beauty because she has to combat the construction of whiteness in addition to able-bodiedness. So just reading what she says, there are 2 comments I tend to get from people: that I'm too beautiful to be disabled, and then I'm too beautiful to be Black. So that's really strange because people don't think that disabled people are beautiful, and people don't think that Black people are beautiful from the comments I've received. So the underlying messages behind, these phrases, that, I'm too beautiful to be Black and I'm too beautiful to be disabled, is that, inherently being disabled is undesirable and that being Black is inherently undesirable, which implies that whiteness and able-bodiedness are the ideal standards of beauty. So Tibitha's different experience from the collective group of Black women in my study, lends Tibitha to an experience of double oppression, which, the other Black women in my study, including myself, do not have to face. Okay, so just to kind of bring this all together, as demonstrated, my individual experiences in my auto-ethnography can be connected to the collective experiences of other Black women. So to be specific, I, with the other Black women in my study, experienced the construction of white standards of beauty as the norm, ideal, and desirable, as well as a shared experience of finding my center and resisting white standards of beauty. These shared experiences sought to confirm the underpinning argument of Black feminography, which is that Black women have shared experiences which need to be known and discussed, in order to produce theory about the way the world works. However, as demonstrated, what also emerged was that, some Black women had different experiences from the collective group, which sought to confirm, the underpinning argument of feminist subjectivity theory, that it's important that we do not generalize shared experiences because not all Black women will face exactly the same experiences as the collective group, which definitely was apparent in my research. So just to reiterate, Black feminography argues that Black women have shared experiences which stem from structural conditions such as gendered racism, but these shared experiences cannot be generalized to all Black women. Yeah. So just to end by saying that, the story and the stories of the Black women in the study, which I think is quite important to kind of highlight this point, they should be read as resistance. We are talking back, we are trying to resist, white standards of beauty by putting forward our own conceptions of beauty and, just saying that these are our definitions of beauty and we are happy with them. And with that, I'd just like to thank you all for listening. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Thanks so much, Rachel. That was excellent. Really interesting, really powerful. I'm going to ask if anyone wants to ask any questions. Shakti, hand straight up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. That was amazing. And I really appreciate your boldness in kind of centering it and claiming it as an auto-ethnography and really applying the personal is political, like showing us how that could be the basis of an ethnography. I just had a question. So as you spoke, I was reminded of, there's a piece by Bell Hooks, Theory as a Liberatory Practice. I don't know if that was the one you cited at the end, but she talks about her experience of increasingly going to Black women activist meetings, and increasingly she felt her academic voice was changing as her audiences changed, or the audiences she cared about changed. I just wondered if in your process of research and reflection and growth, have you found that your thinking about yourself as an academic has changed as well? I know that you talked about not confining it to, Black women as academics, but, more broadly. So I was just curious about how your perception of your audiences and writing had changed in your process. And then also, did you meet anybody by chance who suppose didn't agree with you in terms of the kinds of narratives they offered, and if they didn't have a narrative around critiquing weaves or sort of reclaiming their natural hair, just how would you engage with it if somebody seemed not to have that journey? I guess I'm just asking, as as feminist researchers generally, often it's it's we have to cope with, like, you know, our own personal feelings of disagreement sometimes with people in the field. And I was curious how you've navigated that, or if you've had to at all, or yeah. Thanks. That's all my questions are.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Shakti, for your questions. So in relation to the first question, I think I'm very much influenced by Bell Hooks, and I really like, you know, her approach to kind of appealing to a diversity of audiences and not just focusing on you know, appealing to just an academic audience. And I think definitely that's something that I've been trying to do within my research. And I think it has kind of changed me, and it's kind of molded me to adapt the way I do certain things, and to not feel the pressure to have to maybe write in a particular way or to do my research in a particular way. So I think, like, you know, one of the methods that I'm using for my PhD thesis is a method called sister circles. And it's kind of like in a way to kind of break away from those traditional hierarchies that have been apparent in research between the researcher and the participants, and to kind of, like, you know, democratize power and to allow participants to also be in control of the research process. So I think I'm trying to really, I think, respect my participants and what they have to bring, and not maybe think that because I'm doing the thesis that I have to be in control of it. So I think it definitely has changed me, because it's made, I even, like, not even just with research but also teaching as well. I try to bring this kind of thinking into, like, when I'm working with the students, and to not think that, you know, I have to be the one kind of imparting knowledge. I've learned, like, through teaching on the gender studies course, that, you know, my students have taught me a lot, and I really do value their contributions and what they've shared with me, and, you know, enabled me to learn. So I think it definitely has, Bell Hooks has definitely, her work has definitely influenced me to I don't know, just to appeal, or to appeal to a diversity of audiences. And then in relation to your second question, which you were saying about people who may critique the kind of narrative that I've put forward in my thesis, how would I respond to that? I think, like, I would, you know, because obviously I'm not saying that all Black women, or, you know, women of color will have these kind of experiences where they may feel that white standards of beauty are constructed against them, and that, you know, they've had to resist. And I'll definitely say that I think we should have that dialogue. It's something that, you know, we need to have that conversation. And I think it's very important that this kind of narrative that I've stated in my thesis, I just want to emphasize that it's not a universal experience, that, you know, not all Black women will feel that they have to conform. And in fact, I think I remember speaking to a Black woman, and she had nothing but positive experiences. And I was, like, really enlightened, and I was, like, really inspired by what she'd went through, because it was kind of like the opposite to what I'd been through when I was younger. So it was really nice to kind of have that dialogue with that other Black woman. And I think I'm aware that, you know, not, you know, some Black women, like, may have, like, completely different experiences to me. And I think it's not to say that you're wrong or I'm right, because I'm aware that, you know, there are multiple truths. But yeah, it's just to kind of highlight that, you know, for some women, they have maybe these experiences which are not always positive, and it's just to kind of, I guess, shine a light on that. Yeah. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you again for sharing.
No worries.
Thanks, Shakti. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to put your hand up, or stick them in the chat if you prefer not to speak. I might just ask a question if that's okay. I wanted to ask you about methodology, because I mean, it's quite interesting. You've mentioned auto-ethnography, and you've talked about, quite very, very personal, trauma almost in terms of your experiences. And then you mentioned the sister circles, which is also in lots of ways very personal. I kind of wondered about, I don't know, I guess, how do you kind of feel about that methodology? How has that been to do? How is it inserting yours? Because it's a very feminist thing in lots of ways, kind of insert yourself in your research, but it's also a really difficult thing. So yeah, just your experiences of kind of doing such, personal research and using such personal methods, and how you found that, I suppose, is my question.
Yeah, it's not always, I'll be honest, it's not always comfortable. And like even like with this, and I said at the start, like when I read about, read from Mirza, it's definitely, it can be very uncomfortable when you have to insert your personal experiences, because you're kind of opening yourself up and exposing yourself and allowing people who you may not know to kind of, get into, like, know your kind of intrusive kind of experiences, which are not always which can be embarrassing. But I think with me, I always like to think that, I'm not, the reason why I insert my personal experiences is to kind of hopefully enlighten people, to understand what it's like to inhabit, bodies like mine, and what, just to get an understanding of like how the world works for people who are othered. And so I try to not think about, even though I'm uncomfortable kind of inserting my personal story, I think of the end result. If I could like just try to get people to understand, like, what it's like to live in bodies like mine, then I'm kind of, I feel okay, or it kind of gets me past feeling embarrassed. But it's definitely not easy to do, to kind of put your personal story out there. It's hard, but I think because I've been doing it for a while now, it's just kind of, I'm just used to it, I'd say.
And I mean, we've spoken before, haven't we, about like using that in teaching as like as a teaching practice, and as a kind of a well, sharing in a way for education, and to get them to kind of understand their own position, and how that might be used as like a tool for decolonizing, right? We've spoken about that before.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Doris, you've got your hand up and you've got a question in the chat. Do you want to ask it yourself? Do you want to unmute?
Oh yeah. So you kind of shared about the question within the classroom, but as you said, it was structural outside within society. So yes, all these women, especially in the 70s, were going around with afros, and there was a lot of self-love, but not much changed. So where do you see the structural changes actually occurring?
Big question.
Sorry,
Thank you. Oh, yeah, no, I really appreciate your question. Thank you. I mean, it is difficult, because I think, even though, like, I think now I'm definitely seeing like a lot more Black women learning to love and accept themselves, but nevertheless, I think it's difficult to kind of overturn structures, that have been around, for a very long time. Like, it's hard, especially within even ourselves, within the Black community. Like I was saying before, that it's even embedded within our psyches, that we even, not everyone, but we sometimes internalize these oppressive messages, and we spread them. And so it's something that is really hard to kind of overturn the structures, and it will take a lot of time. But I think, if we can continue, like, with me, like, and I know that other Black women are doing it as well, but just kind of continuing to kind of show that we are like embracing the way we are, not, trying to conform, and just kind of just being who we are, and not being afraid to do that. Hopefully it will kind of encourage, other Black women to kind of feel that, we don't need to kind of conform. We can just be ourselves and be okay with that. but I do realize that it's not easy to always do, because even though we are embracing ourselves, it's like there's always that kind of I don't know, that message, or we just feel like it's not the mainstream, like Black beauty is not the mainstream. And it's like we're always kind of seen as like, it's like at the margins, even though we are embracing it more now, but it's, still we're not, the standard of beauty. So it's just it's difficult, but I think it's definitely worth just keep on fighting and resisting. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Rachel. Shahana, got your hand up.
Yes, thank you so much. Hi, I'm from South Africa, and it's quite unfortunate that these ideas are still so dominant in current day. I mean, these are things that we've been talking about and dealing with over many years, and I guess the sort of addressing racism and coloniality is an ongoing struggle. So thank you for this very interesting work and for sharing your thoughts and your experiences. I just wanted to kind of comment on something you said earlier that struck me. You were saying, I don't remember the exact words, but that you needed to validate, your experiences. And I was just thinking, actually you don't. Your experiences have validity by themselves. And I guess it sort of comes back to using these traditional notions of what is and isn't valid. And I guess sort of linked to your own methodology that you used and the theoretical framework, actually what you're saying is that your experience has validity in itself. And so you don't really need to use other people's experiences to validate it. But of course, to compare and to share and to see to what extent there are differences and comparisons, perhaps. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think that was like when I was reading from Mirza's work, and she was just saying that how we have to kind of reveal intrusive experiences or embodied experiences just to gain that modicum of legitimacy. I agree with what you're saying about I don't need to kind of justify like my experiences are mine. But I think like sometimes it's difficult to get people to understand what it's like to be a Black woman if we don't reveal certain experiences or reveal like private information. Like it's sometimes like I think it's difficult, and I think it just goes to like my methodology and why I kind of use personal experiences and talk about personal experiences a lot within my methodology, because I'm trying to enlighten other people to understand what it's like to kind of embody bodies like mine, and understand the structure of gendered racism and how it operates within Black women's material realities. But yeah, thank you for your question.
So one last question. So Sabanda has got their hand up.
Hi, my name's Fezle. I was
sorry.
that's okay. Thank you, firstly, Rachel. It was really, really informative. I'm a Black woman and I'm doing my PhD as well. So a lot of the things that you had to say really resonated with me. So I wanted to start there. And I'm also really excited to see you using sort of like anti-oppressive approaches in terms of the research methodology with those sister circles. Yeah, so that was really powerful. I kind of wanted to ask about current discourse in terms of the Eurocentric beauty standards. A lot of like things on media and things like that are sort of talking about the ideas of like cultural appropriation, and people like, say, the Kardashians, for instance, taking things or stereotypes that are often associated with Black women, things like big lips or certain hairstyles or having curvaceous body, things like that. And if that plays at all in your own ideas or thinking around, yeah, Black women and aesthetics, or if that played into anything that your contributors had to say.
Yeah, definitely. Like I actually remember one of my participants, and she mentions the Kardashians, and she was just saying how frustrated or how frustrating it is that because, you know, Black women, we've had these features for like, you know, forever. And it's just like, it's only when a white woman has these features that then it becomes embraced. So yeah, I think it's definitely, even though like, you know, we see now such features such as the curvaceous body, big lips, big bum, you know, but I think it's still like frustrating because it's when it's on a white woman, then it's like it's seen as beautiful, but it's still like, you know, Black women cannot be accepted for who they are. You know, they can't just be seen as beautiful. It's like their features, for their features to be seen as beautiful, it has to be on a white woman. So I think it's definitely yeah, I think it can be, you know, cultural appropriation, definitely frustrating and you know, really difficult for, you know, Black beauty to just be embraced and just accepted. I guess it just, you know, we have to just keep resisting and fighting and just embracing who we are. But yeah, thank you for your question.
Thank you, Rachel. So I think we'll call that the end. Thank you so much for sharing that really amazing and really personal work. I think it's really, really valuable. You can see the nice comments in the chat from people. And thank you everybody for coming and asking really great questions. So yeah, thank you, Rachel, very much.
No worries. Thanks everyone.
Bye everyone.
Thank you, Rachel. Excited to hear more of your work as you go on into it. Yeah. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.